Have you ever walked into a place and been judged the second you opened the door? Not for what you said or did, but simply for who you are? Karoline Leavitt did. She walked into a luxury car dealership in Los Angeles, confident and calm, with one simple goal: to buy a car. But the moment the liberal sales manager recognized her as a conservative figure from the White House, everything changed. He mocked her, humiliated her, and then told her to leave, right there in front of a room full of strangers. No crime, no reason, just politics. What happened next? No one saw coming, because the very next morning, a deep red Rolls-Royce pulled up outside that same dealership. And when the door opened, the man who stepped out didn't just come for a car, he came to change everything. This isn't just a story about pride, power, and politics. It's a lesson in humility, redemption, and the quiet strength of doing what's right. Stick around, because by the time this story ends, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about respect, judgment, and second chances. Wearing a crisp white blouse, tailored navy slacks, and a discreet pin with the American flag on her collar, Karoline walked into Westmont Prestige Motors, one of the most elite luxury car dealerships on the West Coast. A place where billionaires signed six-figure checks over espresso, and Hollywood elites eyed Bentleys like they were weekend groceries. But Karoline didn't flinch. She wasn't just anyone. At 27, she was already America's youngest ever White House press secretary under the Trump administration. The media labeled her a firebrand. Her critics called her too sharp, too bold, too unapologetically conservative. To Karoline, that just meant she was doing her job. She strode in, eyes scanning until they landed on a masterpiece. A midnight blue Aston Martin velour, sleek and gleaming like a coiled mussel, parked under a spotlight near the center of the showroom. "This," she murmured to herself, "is the car." "Can I help you, miss?" came a timid voice beside her. A young salesman with nervous energy approached. Eli, maybe in his early 20s, suit slightly wrinkled, name tag off center. "Yes," Karoline said, offering a polite smile. "I'd like to take a look at that Aston Martin." Eli brightened. "Ah, the Valor 6-speed manual, V12 engine, one of only 110 in the world. You've got great taste." It reached for the keys hanging behind the counter when a voice cut in from across the showroom. "I'll handle this, Eli." The tone was calm, the words were polite, but the smirk that followed, anything but. From behind a Porsche Taycan stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. His slick-back silver hair matched the arrogance in his voice. Logan Barrett, the general manager, a man who, according to dealership gossip, prided himself on reading clients before they opened their mouths. Karoline turned, eyebrows raised slightly. "Miss Leavitt, is it?" he said, a knowing glint in his eye. "You seem to already know," she replied. "I do. You were on Fox last week, talking about border security and calling out CNN. Quite the performance." "Thanks, but I'm here for a car, not a debate." Logan stepped between her and the Aston Martin, casually adjusting his cufflinks. "This model isn't for everyone. It's select, exclusive. We don't always make it available for test drives, especially not for first-time visitors." Karoline blinked. "I'm not here for a joyride. I'm here to buy." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Sure, but with respect, Miss Leavitt, our clientele tends to value different things. We cater to innovators, philanthropists, people making a difference." "People like who?" she asked coolly. Logan leaned in slightly. "People not still clinging to a dying ideology," he said with a smile. "People not wearing that pin." Karoline's eyes narrowed. "You're refusing me because I work in politics?" "I'm refusing you," he said, stepping back, "because we don't take MAGA money here." Across the showroom, a couple paused mid-sip of sparkling water. A whisper passed between them. A camera phone lifted discreetly. Karoline exhaled slowly. She could already feel the moment boiling into something else. "You're making a mistake," she said. "I represent millions of Americans. You may not agree with them, but their voices matter, and their money spends the same as yours." Logan didn't flinch. "We also reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Free market, remember?" Karoline tilted her head. "You're hiding bigotry behind policy." He smirked. "Call it what you want, but not everyone gets to park an Aston Martin in their driveway, and certainly not everyone gets to walk in and demand one. Caroline's fingers curled into a fist around her handbag strap. "I'll go," she said after a long pause. "But you'll remember this moment." He shrugged. "I doubt it." She turned on her heel and walked out without another word, her heels echoing like a slow countdown. As the glass door closed behind her, Logan turned to Eli. "God, these MAGA types are always so entitled." But what Logan Barrett didn't know, what no one in the showroom knew, was that Karoline wasn't walking away from the fight. She was setting the stage for the real one. That evening, in the quiet of her Los Angeles townhouse, Karoline sat across from her husband, Matthew Cross, former Navy SEAL, now CEO of one of the largest logistics companies in the Western U.S. He listened in silence as she told him what had happened. When she finished, he didn't speak right away. He stood, poured a glass of bourbon, and stared out the window at the Pacific horizon. "He humiliated you," Matthew finally said, voice low. "He tried," she corrected. He turned. "You want me to handle it?" "I want him to see who he tried to put in a box. I want him to understand what real class looks like." A slow smile spread across Matthew's face. "Then let's give him a show." The next morning, Westman Prestige Motors opened as usual, espresso brewing, sunlight bouncing off a sea of luxury vehicles. But at exactly 10:03 a.m., everything stopped. A blood-red Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the dealership's entrance, rumbling like a mythic beast. Every head turned. The back door opened. And when Matthew Cross stepped out, tall, tailored, imposing, and held out his hand to help Karoline Leavitt from the passenger seat, even Logan Barrett felt something twist in his gut. Karoline straightened her blazer and smiled faintly. She was back, and this time, she wasn't alone. What do you think Karoline should say to Logan in part 2? Should she forgive him if he apologizes, or let him face the full consequences? And if it were you in her shoes, what would you have done? Let us know your thoughts below, and tell us, what country are you watching from right now? If this story got your heart racing, share it with someone who needs to see what real class looks like. Part 2, The Phantom and the Past Mistake. The hum of the red Phantom's engine hadn't even faded when the air inside Westman Prestige Motors shifted like a pressure drop before a storm. Staff behind the glass desk whispered. 2 customers near the Bentley display actually paused mid-sentence. Even the security guard outside adjusted his posture, unsure whether to move closer or stay very, very still. The doors hissed open, and in walked Matthew Cross, his polished shoes tapping on the showroom's gleaming white floor like warning drums. Behind him, Karoline Leavitt followed, her steps silent, controlled, but her eyes, cold steel. Manager Logan Barrett, standing by the Aston Martin, turned just as Matthew removed his sunglasses. "You must be Logan," Matthew said, voice calm, but every syllable landing like a gavel. "I'm here about the Aston Martin you refused to show my wife yesterday." Logan blinked. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Mr. Cross, he asked, though he already knew. The name was on business lists. Forbes had done a feature last year on the ex-SEAL turned CEO who built a shipping empire on the bones of West Coast ports. The man didn't just buy fleets, he built them. "That's right," Matthew said. "You humiliated the wrong woman." I didn't know who she was," Logan stammered. "That's exactly the problem," Karoline replied, stepping up beside her husband. "You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with basic respect." Logan glanced toward the front desk. Eli, the young salesman, was watching wide-eyed, unmoving. Nearby, the receptionist slowly lowered her phone, having clearly been filming. Karoline crossed her arms. "Tell me, Logan, do you reject every woman who walks in here wearing a blouse instead of designer couture? Or just the ones you recognize from Fox News?" "I thought," Logan started. "You thought wrong," Matthew said, stepping forward. "So here's how this goes. You're going to show us the valor. You're going to act like a professional, and after that, we'll decide if your dealership deserves a second chance." Logan hesitated. His ego fought to claw back the control slipping from his hands. But one glance at Matthew's expression, calm, still, and utterly uncompromising, killed that idea. "Yes, of course," he muttered, adjusting his tie. "Let me get the key." As Logan turned to retrieve it, Karoline looked over at Eli. "You were kind yesterday. Thank you." The young salesman flushed. I, I'm sorry I didn't say anything. He's my boss. I didn't want to get fired. Karoline smiled gently. Sometimes just choosing not to laugh is a quiet form of courage. A few minutes later, Logan returned, holding the key fob between two fingers, like it was suddenly heavier than it had ever been. He walked toward the Aston Martin but paused, turning slightly. I owe you both an apology, he said, his voice stilted, carefully measured. It was unprofessional of me to let politics cloud. Stop, Karoline said. Logan's eyes widened. If this is an apology, she continued, it should be for how you treated someone you thought had no power. Not because my husband pulled up in a Rolls Royce. Logan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Matthew stepped forward. Let me make something clear. We're not here for vengeance. We're here to remind you that people like my wife, women who don't walk, talk, or vote the way you want, deserve the same dignity you'd give to a tech billionaire in a Patagonia vest. Karoline placed a hand on her husband's arm. Let's see the car. Sure. Logan, now visibly sweating beneath his blazer, unlocked the vehicle. The Valor's gull-wing doors lifted, and Karoline stepped inside. She ran her fingers over the stitched leather, the polished gear shifter. A quiet moment passed, then she nodded. I'll take it, she said simply. Logan blinked. Would you like to speak with finance? No, Matthew replied. We'll pay in full. In full, Logan echoed. Wire transfer by end of day. I'll have my CFO call you, Matthew said. But that's not all. Karoline turned in her seat. There's one condition. Logan raised an eyebrow. You're going to spend one day, she said, volunteering at a veterans center in East LA, the one I fund. You'll serve meals, clean tables, talk to people whose politics don't match yours, and whose lives didn't afford them your privilege. Logan's nostrils flared, but he said nothing. You can decline, Matthew added, his voice casual. Of course, but then you'll decline the sale. And I'll make sure the story of this dealership's behavior is shared across every business network in California. The room held its breath. Finally, Logan gave the smallest of nods. Fine. Good, Karoline said. Then maybe you'll finally understand what it means to look past a label. That night, the post went live. A single photo. Karoline standing beside the red Phantom, backlit by the LA sun, the Valor in the background, her MAGA pin visible. The caption? He told me I didn't belong, so I sent my husband in a Rolls Royce and bought the car in full, on the condition he volunteers with the veterans he once dismissed. By morning, the post had been shared over 4 million times. By lunchtime, Chuck's Caroline Velour trended in both the US and UK, and by sundown, Westmont Prestige Motors had to shut off their comment section. But Karoline? She just smiled, not because she won, but because someone like Logan was finally going to meet the very people his arrogance had always overlooked. What would you have done if you were Karoline? Would you have walked away or walked back in with a message? And more importantly, have you ever been judged for how you looked, dressed, or believed? Tell us your story in the comments. And where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country below, and if this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Part 3. One car. One lesson. A shift in the room. The morning sun in Los Angeles painted the city in warm gold, but inside the East LA Veterans Center, the lights were colder, the mood humble, and the air filled with the earthy smell of old wood and strong coffee. Logan Barrett adjusted the volunteer badge clipped awkwardly to his designer shirt. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie nowhere in sight, and he was standing beside a battered steel sink full of soapy water, staring at a stack of plates taller than his ego. It had been 6 days since he had mocked Karoline Leavitt at Westmont Prestige Motors. 6 days since Matthew Cross pulled up in a car worth more than Logan's entire house and offered him one choice: volunteer here or forfeit the sale and face a very public PR nightmare. Logan had expected punishment. He hadn't expected this. Excuse me, sir? A deep voice pulled him back. A man in his 70s, missing his right hand, gestured gently toward the drying rack. You're piling too high. They'll tip. Oh, right, Logan muttered. Sorry. No sweat. The man smiled. We've all had our first day. He turned and walked away with grace that made Logan feel clumsy. Across the room, Karoline stepped inside, wearing jeans, a soft navy coat, and no security detail. She scanned the room calmly, then spotted Logan. She walked over, not with gloating, but with purpose. "Didn't think you'd show," she said, her tone measured. Logan looked up from the sink, his pride nowhere in sight. "I thought about not coming," he admitted, "but I've had worse choices shoved at me." Karoline smirked faintly. "You said I didn't belong, and now you're elbow deep in dishwater. Life's funny, huh?" He gave a half laugh, half grunt. "Funnier than I expected." "Okay," Karoline's voice lowered. "I wasn't here to humiliate you. I was here to teach you something." Logan nodded slowly. "I know." He paused, then added, "Last night, I talked to a man named Reggie here. Lost both legs in Fallujah. Guy cracked jokes like he was the one trying to make me feel better. I asked what kept him going, and he said, the people who still believe in this country, the ones who don't quit when it's uncomfortable." Logan looked her in the eye. "You're one of those people, aren't you?" Karoline didn't blink. "I try to be." "I was wrong," he said. "About you, about MAGA, about what respect means." She studied him, then nodded once. "That's all I wanted to hear." Later that afternoon, Karoline stepped outside the center. Matthew was parked at the curb in the red Rolls Royce, leaning against it in a black t-shirt, coffee in hand. "Well?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. She shrugged. "He washed dishes, served food, took direction from a man with one hand and zero patience for arrogance." Matthew laughed. "I like Reggie already." "I think Logan left different than he walked in," she added, "which means we didn't just buy a car. We rewired a man's worldview." Matthew opened the passenger door for her, "And I got to flex my phantom doing it. Win-win." Karoline rolled her eyes, grinning. "You really loved that entrance, didn't you?" "Oh, please," Matthew said. "I've dreamed of that moment since I bought this beast." They drove off slowly, sunlight glinting off the hood, and somewhere behind them, Logan Barrett stood at the Veterans Center entrance, watching, still wearing the badge, still thinking. 2 weeks later, Karoline received a handwritten letter on thick cardstock with a blue ink signature. It read, "Miss Leavitt, I owe you a deeper apology than I could give face-to-face. Your grace and restraint gave me something I didn't know I needed, a mirror. I've made judgments I now regret, but I'm starting over. And I have you and your husband to thank for that. I've also requested Westmont donate part of my commission from your sale to the East LA Veterans Center. It's a start. Respectfully, Logan Barrett." Karoline read it twice, then placed it in a drawer next to other personal letters, ones that mattered, that reminded her why she chose the hard fights. That evening, as she sat on her porch with Matthew and their son playing in the yard, she whispered, "One conversation can change a life." Matthew nodded, sipping his drink. "And sometimes, so can one car." In the months that followed, Westmont Prestige Motors quietly shifted. Their social media posted a Veterans Day tribute featuring Logan delivering meals at the center. They removed all political messaging from their staff bios. Logan's name never made the news. But inside the dealership, they all knew something had changed. Karoline didn't need a press release to prove a point. She'd already made it, with her calm, with her grace, and with one powerful red car. Now it's your turn to reflect. What do you think of Karoline's story? Was Logan's transformation sincere, or was he just saving face? If you were in Karoline's shoes, would you have forgiven him or taken him down? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you or made you think twice about judgment, comment 3 below. Comment 1 if it missed the mark for you, or 2 if it was just okay. And don't forget, tell us what country you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this one touched your heart, share the video. You never know who might need a reminder that dignity starts with how we treat each other.